I'm going to show you how to do a render passes in Maya, and then I'm going to bring each of those render passes into Photoshop and composite them. What that allows you to do is, for example, you can control the amount of specular hitting that. So you render this and like, well, I think the specular is too much, so you can actually bring it down, do that. Or you may, for example, you want to do hue saturation here. You can change the color of all the light. So this is my left light coming in there. So I can choose what light is hitting the left like that. Or maybe I'm going to do for my right light doing that. So you can choose your right light doing that coming in. Okay. So let me go into Maya and show you how to set that up. Go to Maya. Here we have a scene of a skull sitting on a podium. So the first thing here, what I need to do is to create a render camera. So I will go to Create Camera and choose Camera. Move the camera into the scene here. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so we can see the camera. Move it up, and then I'm going to look through the camera. I can go here to look through the camera. I can choose look through selected, or I can select the camera in my outline and drag it in. You see it has a little plus sign to the arrow. Let go, and now I'm looking through the camera. Doing that. So I'm going to line my camera up. I'm going to turn on my resolution gate by just selecting here. Looks good. And I'm going to hit this camera lock. What that allows it to do is I can't move my camera. Okay. Next what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up my lights in my scene right now. So I'll go into Arnold, Lights, and choose Area Light. Go into my perspective so I can see it. Bring it here. I can make this a little bit bigger. Move it up. And then I can move it to the side here. And I'm going to rotate this by holding J down. And hit J, it snaps every 50 degrees. You can see I did 4 to 5 degrees here. So I'm going to place my lights how I want it. So to turn the lights on, I can hit 7, or I can click this right here. So right now this is no light hitting. So I'm going to my exposure or to here. I'm going to choose that to 17. And let's render this out. So I'm going to go to Arnold and hit render and see what it looks like. That looks pretty good. Let's make it a little bit stronger. There we go. Okay. So next what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a second light. Doing that. So I'm going to go in here. I can just duplicate this light. Control D. Move it over here. And I'm going to change it to 45. Now I'm going to move this light a little bit up. Sort of like that, and I'm going to bring it down here a little strong here. So I'm going to test render this. Alright, so while that light is selected, I can just select this right here, which is isolate. So select isolate, so not only that light is being rendered right now. So a bit like that. If I choose this light, so now is my left light is only rendering now. Okay. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to turn that off and both lights are rendering. Yep, that looks great doing that. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these lights into light groups, and that's going to allow me to control my composite rendering lights in Photoshop. So maybe in my left light I would add a little more color to it, or make it not as bright or brighter. And or my right light, if I'll make the same thing, I'll change the color or the brightness. I can do that in my composite. Doing that. So to do that, I want to select my first light in here. I'm going to name this left light, and that's my light in my AO light group. Then in here I'll choose this right here, AI area light, and I'm going to name this right light. Okay. So the next thing here, what we're going to do is we are going to set up the textures for the skull. doing that. We have a texture diffuse map, and then we use a normal map doing that. So I'm going to do in here, I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to select the skull. We're going to right click, choose Assign New Material. And then we are going to choose Arnold. And we're going to choose the AI Standard Surface. And here, we're going to name this to AI Skull. Here. And then here is set to 0.8. So it won't be full brightness. So we make sure we see all the colors. Make that to 1. Bring up the weight. And then in here, in the color here, we're going to choose this checkerboard right now. So I'm going to click the checkerboard. Doing that. And we go to Maya. Oh, sorry, we go to 2D texture. Oops, you can see here now, I have shadow typed in there. There we go. So I'll choose 2D texture, and then we choose 5 right here. Okay, and then in here it says image name. You will click the folder right here. So click the folder, and then I'm going to choose the diffuse map. Do that. Here is my diffuse map here for the skull. Hit open. To see that, all I have to do now is just click this little checkerboard, or you can hit 6 on your keyboard doing that. So next we are going to put the normal map on it. So select your skull, AI skull, go into your arrow, click your arrow sign, and then here in the bump map we can choose the checkerboard. So choose the checkerboard, and then a checkerboard I'm going to choose the same thing here. You can see it repeats the line itself. So I choose that, and then in here use as, we can change this bump to tangent space normal. Do that. So click that. And then in here we can click this arrow right here. And actually click the little arrow over the square. Click that. And then we can choose the folder again. So here, click the folder. And we are going to choose the normal map right here. Just a normal, give me a little 2D 2.5 texture sort of material in here. So click that. Oops, make sure I hit open. Do that. Okay. You can see it's not quite right. Doing that, so in the color space, we can change this sRGB to raw. There we go. So now let's test render. This is what this looks like. Doing that. Okay, it's looking pretty good. So the thing here we want to do now is that it's a little bit too glossy doing that. So we're going to change here in the roughness here. But remember, we can change this in the composite as well. So I'm going to bring this a little bit up here. Something like that. That looks good. Doing that. So the next thing here we're going to do now is we're going to set up the render passes. So the first render pass I'm going to set up are the most common render passes, which is direct, diffuse direct, and diffuse indirect, and then specular indirect, and then specular direct. So I'm going to stop this down. Open up my AOVs, doing that, my render settings right here. So click this little ball right here. Oops, sorry, I lied. I meant the clapper. Sorry, I was thinking ahead. Sorry, I'm going to click this clapper with the gear on it. So click that. And then when you guys open up, you probably come in here. That's where you guys most likely will come. So I'm going to scroll over here to the AOVs, doing that. And here are all the different types of AOVs I can add, or render passes I can add to my scene. You can add more by adding custom, which we are going to do, doing that. So the first ID pass I'm going to add is an ID pass, doing that. That will allow me to select certain items in the scene like that. So maybe I'll check this tooth or this top skull, and only that area affect the color, or it can affect the tensor specular, and so on. So all I have to do is select that and hit the arrow key right here. So that goes over. And then I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to choose the diffuse direct and diffuse indirect, which will actually become diffuse. But basically, this is where the light bounces off and then bounces off for the final gathering. Doing that. So I select both of these by holding shift, and then I can click this arrow. And then I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to choose specular right. I'm sorry, it's not right. Specular direct, and then specular indirect. So I'm going to hold shift, both over, click over, doing that now. So now let's test render this. I'm going to go in here, go to Arnold, render. So here you can see my beauty pass, my ID passes, doing that. Oh, you can see that I need to separate the all the teeth, so it'd be all individual. I'll do that, but let's go through these to do that. So here's my diffuse direct, here is my diffuse indirect, and here's my diffuse direct, and here's my specular indirect. Doing that, so all working fine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to my skull here, and I'm going to separate all the items there right now, all the attached layers. So go to modeling, and I'm going to separate. Do that. So now I can choose each individual teeth. So now if I render, my ID passes will have, oh, yep, there we go. I have all different colors where I can use the magic wand and choose the what I want to be, color corrected or amount of specular, whatever you want to do. All right. So now I'm going to set up my custom renders, doing that, my customs AOV. So what I'm going to set up is the ambient occlusion, a shadow pass, left light, and then the right light. So first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to click this, add a custom, and I'm going to type AO, which stands for ambient occlusion. And then in here now, when that opens up a new window right now, and in the new window right here, it says custom AOV. I'm going to click the shader right here, and I'll click this little checkerboard. And I'm going to find the AO in here. Doing that, here it is. I'm into Arnold. Choose the AO thing here. I'm going to do that. And now this pops up. Let's test render this. And go to my AO, which one, my custom one that I just created right here. You can see it's a little bit blown out doing that, so I'm going to start fixing that doing that. Oops, make sure I render this. Something like that. Maybe bring down the whites. With the spread, there we go. So you can see add a little more shading here. I get a little more definition over here. And I want to change the quality render to maybe 4. That's when I get a little more definition here. There we go. Maybe leave it there. Something like that. Okay, that looks good. Looks better than I had before. It's not as blown out. Do that. All right. So next what I'm going to do now is add my shadow pass right now. So do the same thing, do the AO. Hit the add custom, and I'm going to type in shadow and hit create, and do the exact same thing with the AO. I'm going to click this little checkerboard and then choose Arnold, and then I'm going to type in shadow, if I can spell shadow, do that, and I'm going to choose the AO shadow matte. And the old Arnold was called a shadow catcher, which sounds pretty cool. Sounds like a movie. Wait, actually, is it that movie? Yeah. So choose the AI shadow matte. Do that. So now I should have my shadow in here. So I'm going to render. Go into my shadow right now. You can't see it, so we're going to turn off the alpha. So you can see my shadow right here now. Good. So the next thing, the final render right here, I'm going to set up my render pass is the lights. Doing that. So I'm going to do the exact same thing I did AO. I'm going to go into shadow. I'm going to add a custom. And what you have to type in order for the lights to work, you have to type in RGBA underscore, and then we have to do is whatever we name these lights, do that. I name these lights left light. Make sure it's spelled right, okay? And then I'm going to add the other light, add RGBA, make sure you type that in, underscore right light right here. So I'm going to check if these are right. So click here, go to my light. Yep, so this is my left light, and this should be my right light. Do that. So all right, make sure I'll spell it correctly. So let's test render now. I should have my here's my left light, and here's my right light. Do that. And it's just the same thing I had here to isolate. Doing that. Okay. So next in here, let's set up the render right now. So I'll close this down. Go to my comment text. In here, define name. We need to add a proxy here now, or a thing here, not proxy, but add a column here. So I'm going to choose my render pass right here. Render pass. I'm going to type in skull. Do that. Okay. For you guys, we probably say for default EXR, so I changed this to TIFF. And then in here, in the format, I'm going to choose integer 16. It will work with 8. I choose integer 16, so what it means is my IDs will be in grayscale, but it won't be as there won't be a true black there. It'll be a nice little gradient. Do that. So I'll scroll down in here. Next here, I'm going to choose the frame animation extension. But I believe when you guys start off here, it would say name single frame. I changed this to name underscore pound. And you can see up here, this is what it's going to look like. So each of my render pass will be the render pass underscore skull. Do that. Scroll down here. Here it says render frames. I'm only render 1 frame. Do that. So change that to 1. And then in here it says renderable camera. I'm going to choose camera 1. Do that. And then for my size here, I'm going to choose 1080. Do that. All right. So I'm going to double check this. All of this is set up correctly. Camera, render passes. I'm going to check all here. All looks good. All right. Let's render this and hope for the best. Go to rendering here. If you have the educational version doing that, you probably have to go into the render sequence right here. And then you choose the camera you rendered from, and then you hit render, or you can choose, make sure also where you're rendering to do that, which is should go into the images folder by default. Do that. So I'm going to render as a batch render. So I hit batch render, and you can see here on the progress here when it's done. And this could take a couple minutes, a couple seconds to do that. So I'm going to click this, and I'm going to speed up the video. Okay, so it got done rendering. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to load those render passes in Photoshop, and then I'm going to start composite them together to make it a skull. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Scripts, and I'm going to choose Load Files into Stack. And then in here, I'm going to browse to where the renders I did. So I hit Browse. And in here, you can see all the different renders I did here. My AOs, I got my left light, I got my D passes, and so on. So select here, hit OK. It'll just take a few seconds, and then hit OK. Load here. Okay, I keep loading. Okay, there we go. So now I want to move these layers, that how I like it when I composite do that. So I like to think as the diffuse and colors to be on the bottom of that, and then you have my specular on top doing that. So let's move these around. So what I like to do is I like to put my ID passes on top, and I'm going to hide that. And then also I like to put my beauty pass over that. So this is what the main render looks like. I'm going to hide that. And then in here, I'm going to look for my diffuse direct, and then I'm going to look for my diffuse indirect. So I'm going to put these on the bottom. And then here's my direct right now, my spectral direct and my spectral indirect. And then I like to put my RGB lights on top, do that. And then here, these here, you can decide where you want to go in here, depending on the looks right now. But for now, I'm just going to leave it right here. So I'm going to hide all of these and start doing my render pass. So here is my direct. Really, it doesn't really matter here. If I choose this, if I choose linear, it really has no effect. But if I do it here now, do a linear defect now. So now you can see this has effect. So I'm going to do the same thing for my specular indirect. I'm going to go into huge linear dots right here. And then in here, I'm going to choose this, my specular indirect, and change that to linear dots. Oops, I hit the wrong one. Make sure you choose right layer. Do that. So now, here, now you can see I actually have the same render I did before. Okay? So now let's do the rest of these. Do that. So right here is my shadow pass. You can see in here, it adds a shadow to it. If you want to control different looks to it, you can choose different type of adjustment layer you want. So maybe you want a little darker, this may multiply, or you want normal doing that. So you can choose how you want. That's kind of cool. Growing divide. Do that. So I'm just going to choose screen for right now. Do that. And then in here's my AO. Do that. And I'm going to choose multiply. Make sure I choose the correct one. Sorry about that. There we go. Multiply. And you can choose what you want here. That looks kind of cool. Doing that. And you can choose what you want here. Soft or hard light. Doing that. So I'm going to choose multiply. I'm going to move this down here. In the bottom here. Oops, too far. There we go. You can see I have my ambient occlusion here in the bottom here. I think that looks better. Dude, it fills in the blackness here. And then the same thing in here. This is my lights now. So I'm going to choose my left light. And this is what you do. Make sure you select it. And I'm going to do screen. So here's the screen. See, it looks just like in Maya rendered it. And then do the thing at the top here. Make sure I choose the correct layer when I do adjustments. There we go. So now I have the light. So it's a little bit brighter than I had before doing that. But I think it looks better. So now what I can do now is I can start controlling like the different things of the scene here. So basically right now, my left light here is I'm going to add a level thing here. So I'm going to choose the brightness. So select that. Bring this over and select this, so it only affects this layer. So you can see right here affects that, doing that. Or maybe add a little red light. Okay. And maybe what we can do now is select a part now. So maybe we want to select this tooth right now, and maybe you want to change the color of this tooth right now. So in here, select this. I can go to a adjustment layer, do that, and maybe we choose color balance, doing that. So I have a little mask right here. So now that tooth is being adjusted how you want. Okay, so that is how you composite the render layers, render passes in Photoshop, and then you can adjust whatever how you want it doing that. So thank you for watching and have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye bye.